Welcome everyone to this little session on what the differences between an MBA and EMBA are. So my name is Marc Nerva. I'm from ESSEC Business School. I'm the Senior Manager of Business Development for the ESSEC and Mannheim EMBA Asia Pacific. So just a really short introduction on ESSEC Business School for those of you who may not know us. We are one of the top business schools in France, one of the top 4, and we're one of the top business schools in Europe as well, within the top 8. Noting that this webinar is quite short and I want to be able to get through as many of your questions as I possibly can. If there are further details that you'd like to know about us, we are really looking forward to speaking to you during the postgrad fair today. So the ESSEC and Mannheim EMBA is what I represent, and why are we doing this topic on the differences between MBAs and EMBAs? So for me and for the other advisors from other schools, we speak with a lot of candidates, and for me personally, I began to realize that there are patterns in the questions that candidates ask me, as well as certain concerns and confusions that I identify in them that they may not necessarily share or say in an open way. So I think it would be helpful especially for EMBA candidates, regardless if you're considering applying with ESSEC or not, to know the differences between what an EMBA and MBA are. And I think that this is also a really helpful way for you guys to get to know ESSEC and to get to know us. I have 3 caveats for this little session that we're doing. The first caveat is that this focus for this webinar is going to be predominantly for EMBA candidates. So it doesn't mean that you won't get anything out if you're a regular MBA candidate, but it's just helpful to know. But of course, a lot of the focus is going to be for EMBA candidates. The second caveat is that the examples that I'm going to give are from our program, and that's just to give some context and hopefully to help make things a little clearer. Which leads me into my third caveat, which is these are our views from our experience, and it's a general thing. If you go online and you read any article about the differences between an EMBA and MBA, or even articles about MBAs on their own or EMBAs on their own, nobody will be able to give you a right answer because different schools have different circumstances, they have different program structures, and so on and so forth. So as a case, just as a little example, for ESSEC and Mannheim, for the ESSEC and Mannheim EMBA Asia Pacific, our youngest candidates tend to be about 32 or 33 years old. And some schools may have it younger, some schools may require you to be a bit older. But these views should generally stand for most circumstances and give you an overall perspective. So just a few house rules on my side for this. Most presenters love interaction, and unfortunately, because we're trying to focus this as best we can, so there's no chat function to distract you, but we would love it if you ask questions. A major part of EMBA programs is peer-to-peer learning. So take it as an opportunity to maybe contribute something to the group, and as well as learn from other people's questions if they have any. As Jimmy mentioned, there's a Q&A function at the bottom. And hopefully we'll get lots of questions from you guys, and hopefully we'll get to answer as many of them as we possibly can. I know that some people may not want to ask questions because they may feel a little shy or worried if the question is a good question or not. Please ask your questions. This is a great opportunity for you to voice them out and get answers to them. One big thing about a lot of you who are attending here, if you are looking to do an MBA or an EMBA, one of the biggest reasons you're wanting to do that is because you want to stand out from the crowd, right? You want to be able to make yourself more visible in a better way to advance your own career prospects and to develop as a whole. So if one challenge I'm going to sort of make to you guys today is, if you are trying, why are you trying so hard to fit in when you're looking to stand out? So ask your questions. There are no stupid questions, and we'll try and get to them as best we can. So I'm just going to share my screen now, and we'll proceed through this. Okay. Okay, so what's the difference between an MBA and an EMBA? So a few of the sort of sections we're going to look at candidate profiles, admissions requirements, program delivery, diversity and networking, because these are going to be sort of the biggest areas that we're going to be looking at. So as we start, the first question that I think everyone, not everyone, but a lot of you may have is an EMBA an MBA qualification? And the short and direct answer to that is yes, it is absolutely an MBA qualification. The qualifications are the same, whether you do an MBA or an EMBA. It's just that the format is different and it's delivered differently. And this is because both programs are catered to people at different stages of their career. So it's typical that an MBA candidate would be at an earlier phase of their career, and therefore they may have more of a focus on rounding out their skill set and exploring new career opportunities, as opposed to an EMBA candidate. They tend to be a little older, looking to enrich their existing knowledge with tangible and immediate takeaways that they can use in their businesses, when they go back there. Now, as an example of this, we find that we tend to get a lot of technical experts in our program. And the reason for this is, whether they're a biomedical scientist or whether they're an engineer, they start off their careers, working on really technical aspects of their role, and many of them then move into project management. And they may head research and development, for example. But what a lot of them feedback to us, or why they come to us, is because they feel that in order for them to move to the next level of their careers, which is into higher management, they need to have a more commercial perspective of business and be able to execute strategies around that. So, as an example, our EMBA candidate profile typically tends to be senior to senior executives. They're about 39 years. Well, the average age is about 39 years. Professional experience minimum 8 years, but average of 15. And we typically do require a minimum of 3 years of managerial experience. So just comparing this first part to, say, MBA programs, the ESSEC Global MBA program usually takes in an average age of about 30 years, and then the average experience would be about 6 years. When we talk about managerial experience for EMBA candidates, I think a lot of schools would agree that this is not limited to just people management, but also project management, because roles certainly have changed as the decades have gone on. So in terms of what a candidate might be looking for, so they're looking at, again, as I mentioned before, career advancement, breaking the ceiling and moving on into high echelons of management and leadership. Obviously, better compensation is something that I think a lot of people are going to be looking at, and rightly so, because it is a sizable investment. Some EMBA candidates, although they're at a later stage of their career, may still be looking to switch industries. And certainly companies, if they're not looking to move up within their own organizations. As I mentioned, especially for the technical experts, a lot of them are looking for better business education, looking at the more commercial side of things, and the ability to think critically, make better decisions, strategically. So that's the sort of average candidate profile. Again, this might differ from school to school. Okay, so as I mentioned, for admissions requirements, we were talking about minimum of 8 to 10 years of work experience. This will differ a lot from the GMBA, from the MBA profile, just because at a younger level, a lot more schools will require you to do things like GMAT, for the MBA profile. But for the EMBA candidates, this minimum years of working experience is essential because it is a large part of how we assess your viability for the program. Okay, and just as an added example, if there are people, for example, who do not have degrees but have gone on to be very successful in their careers, and if they are looking to get an academic qualification, Schools like ESSEC, for example, also allow this, but that's where your career path has to be really excellent and allow us to be able to say, yeah, you know, this is a program that you would benefit from and that we think you would also add a lot to. So now, because most programs are done in English all over the world, so you have to be fluent in English, and if you are an international candidate, if you demonstrate that you are functional, you know, comprehensively in English, that's great. Otherwise, you know, we would require you to submit a TOEFL or IELTS. Okay, so when I first mentioned that MBA and EMBA programs are largely, you know, the qualification is the same, but they differ in terms of delivery. So we are talking about full-time programs versus what people typically say are part-time or modular programs. So MBA programs, as many of us are already aware, you know, the full-time, they run typically for 12 to 24 months. And this has a big implication because if you are at a younger, at an earlier stage of your career and if there are less sort of responsibilities to have handled in life professionally and personally, then, you know, that could be a great way because programs are immersive, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. But the big implication here is that we have to consider opportunity cost. If you are looking to do an MBA program and you can afford the time and money away from work, great. But that opportunity cost does add up. So, you know, you may find in a lot of programs that MBA fees tend to be a little bit lower, and they also have maybe a few more scholarships on offer, but that's also because there is a lot of that opportunity cost perspective in play for not being able to work full-time for a year or two. For us, in an EMBA, you know, there are different formats. All of them are part-time. You know, the modular, so they may be, say, in full blocks of a full week block or even weekend blocks. So if you think about it, in that perspective, an MBA is more like a marathon, whereas an EMBA is a series of short but intense sprints. So for our program, for example, it's a 15-month program that runs from October in 1 year to December of the following year. And ours is a block sort of program where we do 6 full days at a time on campus. So just as an example, this is what a typical schedule looks like from our program. So as you can see, you know, there are full blocks of 1 week in Singapore for most months. We have 2 overseas residencies as well. There's some online learning in between, and the weeks in between for you to go back to, you know, to attend to your work and your family life. It is still robust because there are projects and assignments to do in between. So it's a really important point to consider. Schedule, we think, is probably the bigger component of whether or not an EMBA program is viable for you, and cost would be a second thing. So moving on to what you can expect in network and lifestyle. So the MBA program is more immersive. There are more opportunities for you to take part in extracurricular activities, and that's just a product of a full-time program. Now, for EMBA programs, because they are part-time and because, you know, many of our participants have to fly in from different parts of the world, you know, it makes a big difference in being able to get to know your classmates better. So therefore, EMBA cohorts tend to be a little smaller than MBA cohorts, and then we, you know, so that you can get to know your fellow participants and your peers better whenever you're in class, and also you know, when you're doing projects in your off time. So for us, for example, our cohorts are very diverse. We get people from all over the world. This is an example from the current batch that is running. As you can see, we've got people from about 10 different nationalities. And they also come from various industries We're looking at everything from banking and finance, chemical engineering to law. We get a lot of lawyers and hub programs, to everything from construction to dentistry, shipbuilding, and offshore engineering. Sorry, can you hear me? Hi. Let me try that again. Can you hear me now? Okay, guys. I'm sorry if you can't hear me on this, but Jamie, give me a thumbs up if you can. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm gonna have to do this. Okay, so as I was saying, yeah, a lot of diversity in our programs, and that tends to be a hallmark of many EMBA programs. Various schools will showcase this point of diversity because it's such an essential thing. Because peer-to-peer learning is so big, EMBA programs tend to try and get as diverse a population as possible, in order to ensure that when you are in class, you get to learn from as many different perspectives as possible, and therefore round out your education in a more intense and accelerated way. Okay, so just touching on the last point, which is our fees and. So as an example, again, this is what our fee structure looks like. We're priced at 94,000 Singapore dollars in GST, but there are scholarships available. Now let's talk about scholarships for a moment. The first thing to say around this is that scholarships are unique to different individuals. Yes, some are time sensitive and some are merit based. So EMBAs, when they first were produced, a lot of the people that came on board these programs were sponsored very heavily by their companies. And unfortunately, this is a trend that has gone down over the years, to the point that we see less full sponsorships from companies, but we still have companies that do sponsor a part of our candidates programs. But because of that increase in self-funding, many schools now offer scholarships to help candidates to be able to attend these programs and to be able to afford it and move on in their careers. It's a similar concept to full-time MBA programs who are almost entirely self-sponsored, and therefore the schools will try and help them to also be able to afford this. As I mentioned, it is quite a personal thing, depending on your profile, and I would encourage you to speak with me or any other advisors as to what is possible for you. Okay. Now, if you are looking at this, when we talk about return on investment, also please bear in mind, as I mentioned, there is, especially if you are in sort of that window of 30 to 34 years old, where you're considering between doing a full-time MBA or an executive MBA, it is helpful to also consider the opportunity cost and what makes the most sense to you. So, whether you do a full immersive program, get to know your fellow participants on a much deeper level, then you might want to go into a full-time MBA if you qualify for that. But then if you're looking at sort of interacting with people who have maybe a bit more experience and more strategic views, and also your family and your professional life does not allow you to be able to take time away from work, then EMBA might be the better choice for you. Okay, so that's basically it in a nutshell. There's a lot more detail that I could go into, but as I mentioned, in the interest of time, and I'm hoping to get through some of your questions, I'm going to sort of end that little presentation there, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions. Let's see, we've got a bunch of them. Okay, so let's see from the top. Will the range of age group 35 to 40 still fall for master's admission? From the ESSEC point of view, the answer is a yes. Again, it may differ for other schools and for other programs. Okay. What if we have no money? Like if you have no money, then I would encourage you to maybe look at your career first, because that is the more important thing. Now, remember that even for MBA programs, at a more junior level, the large part is peer-to-peer learning. So the experience that you bring with you is vital. If you imagine yourself being in a classroom, if you're an engineer and you're discussing a marketing case study, with someone who is from an accounting role, both of you are going to have different experiences and different opinions, and that discussion and that debate, right, is going to add greatly to your experience and to your learning. How much is the EMBA versus MBA? Okay. Well, I can't speak for all schools, but for us, the cost would be about a $15,000 difference. But then again, you have to take that in context also with the scholarships that are offered, and also to the opportunity cost. So if you're doing a full-time MBA and you have to fly into a particular area, then you're going to have to take the cost of your board, where you're going to live, your daily expenditure, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's see. Okay, a lot of it was for Mike's. Okay, so one of you asked Jan asks is how are the fees breakdown like and the period like? This again depends from school to school. So if you're asking for the EMBA program, typically we break down the fees into 4 payments. So for us, if 94,000 Singapore dollars is the headline rate, then what you would do is subtract the scholarship amount from that, and that will leave you with the net amount that you have to pay. Now, from that net amount, 9,400 is an administrative fee, which is the first payment, and that is paid upon your acceptance into the program and your registration. So then that figure, the remaining figure thereafter, is split into 3 equal payments, and those payments are spread out across, the time difference in between those payments is about 4 to 5 months. I hope that answers your question. Okay, Shankara, I already have a master's in program management. Is it better to go for an EMBA or AMSIB? I'm in middle management right now, but I run several businesses on the side. It's a difficult question to answer straight up. Again, like I say, a lot of things, specifically for EMBA candidates, right, are very unique to each individual. So what I would encourage you to do is speak with several advisors just to get an idea of what makes sense for you. Because schedules are going to differ. The program structure and what you're trying to achieve is also going to differ. So it's really difficult to answer that question. And yeah, I would encourage you to speak with different advisors about that. Okay. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for that, but it is really unique to you. Okay, so next. What makes ESSEC different from local business schools such as NUS and NTU that are top ranking? Okay, so I'm going to say this straight up, and anyone who's listening on this, if you're looking at EMBA programs in Singapore, there are only 5 schools that you're going to be looking at and comparing. If you want to do sort of an apple to apple comparison, and these 5 schools are NUS, NTU, SMU, INSEAD, and ourselves. The reason I say this is because these are the schools in Singapore that have full dedicated campuses with faculty who are resident here, and have full support systems. Now, what makes us different from NUS and NTU? NUS and NTU are really good schools. And their profiles, for us, from our experience and from what candidates tell us, is that, some of their programs maybe focus a bit more on a few traditional things. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that any MBA or EMBA program are going to cover about 50 to 60% of similar topics, because these are the topics that you need to do in order to justify that you are issuing or running an MBA or EMBA program. The difference between schools lies in what they tend to focus in. So for ESSEC's MBA program, for example, we tend to focus on things like digital business strategy, and there is also a specialization on luxury, for example. Now, the reason we do this is because we understand that, a lot of candidates who go into, or traditionally in the past, a lot of candidates that have gone into MBA programs, let's face it, a lot of them wanted to end up working in investment banking or management consulting. But I think a lot of schools have also recognized that there are a lot of people who don't, and that, a lot of people want to get a solid business education, but may want to focus on different things and not dedicate a large amount of their time to doing accounting and finance, for example. It doesn't make one school better than the other. It's just a different way of, catering to different people, different profiles, as well as being able to address market needs. The one thing I will say about ESSEC is that, we tend to have, for the EMBA program, we tend to have a smaller population than most. There is a reason for that. It has to do with our overseas residencies, because we link up with the ESSEC and Mannheim cohort in Europe, and that helps to add a level of diversity. But because we have a smaller profile, it would then stand to reason that our diversity is lower, but that is absolutely not true. We tend to have a higher diversity than most other programs. Okay. Based on school data, is there a percentage of success rate of career crossover? I can only speak on behalf of the EMBA program, and that is really a relative question, because many of our participants want to stay in their own industries and in their own companies, and they do the program as a way to accelerate their progression in their companies. But have there been people who have crossed over in terms of industry and company? The answer is an absolute yes. Without naming names, I'll give you two examples of candidates recently in the last, say, 1 to 3 years. So we had a candidate who was a biomedical researcher, did our program because he wanted to move, and ended up in FMCG thereafter. We also had a petrochemical engineer who was working for Shell, and she also moved into FMCG, just coincidentally. So there are stories of people who have crossed over, but it's difficult to say again, simply because many of our participants are, don't want to move. Okay. So, have a chat with me about that, and I can share more details with you about those stories if that helps. Okay, so is EMBA, okay, well, sorry, let me read this. EMBA will be more target effective for executives who try to accelerate their career in the same industry, or could it help career switches? Also, Uni, you asked a question about success rate or career crossover. So EMBA, the question about career crossover is less prevalent for EMBA programs, simply because of the different stage at which people are at. It is possible. One of the things that ESSEC also includes is an executive career coach during the program. And this person takes each individual through, sessions that will help you to define where you are at in your career, and also where you might want to go, and identify the gaps that you would need to sort of fill, and things that you might want to address. It's not, that's not to say that it's not effective, but it's just less prevalent. But yes, the answer is yes, it certainly is viable if you're looking to switch industry. And of course, it's catered very much to people who are looking to progress vertically. Okay. Do you need a company sponsorship to join your program? The answer is no. As I've mentioned, the program is EMBA programs and candidates increasingly self-funding. But of course, with that, if you are self-funded, that's when I would encourage you to come and talk to us about whether you fit the program, whether the program fits you. And if that is the case and you're a good fit, then I'd be very happy to speak to you in depth about what scholarship opportunities are available. And no, you do not need a company sponsorship. EMBA programs encourage candidates to have company support, whether it's in terms of financial support or whether, or more importantly, support in terms of being able to take the time off to do the program. Because the planning involved in this is really critical, and it also is because you are going to take time away from work. That's the first thing. Then you would need to balance that also with your family life. So having company support is important. It's not essential, but it's encouraged. So you don't need company sponsorship, but it would be great to have company support for the time taken off. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I think we are done with the questions that we have for now. Do any of you have any other questions? Is there a preferred admission assessment? Okay. Again, depends from school to school. So some schools for EMBA programs, they may still require GMAT. We do not. Some schools will administer assessments in-house or their own in-house assessments. For us, our assessments are done based on your application. So there are essays that you need to write. EMBA application procedures can be a little painful, but it is really important so that we can get a really good idea of where you're at. So our assessment is done through a couple of essays that are required, and also through an academic jury which you'll attend after your application is complete. And there you'll be interviewed by the academic director of the program, as well as another professor that teaches on the program, and they make the final decision. Okay, there are assignments as mentioned, and may I know how intensive for the assignments as in numbers since need to travel for business? Okay, great. Just because an EMBA program is part-time or modular does not mean that it's easy. It is intense, which is why I spoke about planning and support from your company as well as your family. Now, one of the things that, and I'll speak for our school, right, is our professors understand that EMBA participants are typically very busy people. So they still need to have assignments that are robust. Why pay money to do a program that isn't going to improve you and isn't going to challenge you? But they also balance it with making it accessible enough that you can maybe spend about an hour or two a day, for a week or so, and you'd be able to get through your assignments. Numbers are a relative thing. So after every class, before every class, you may have some pre-assignments or pre-reading, and certainly after each class, you'll have an individual report or a group project to work on. I think numbers are a little irrelevant in the sense that the quality and the intensity of the assignment is more sort of pronounced. So just note that yes, there are assignments before and after each of the classes, and they are robust, but they are made as accessible as possible so that you can get through them without having to turn your whole life sort of upside down. Okay, we've done that. Upcoming EMBA events that you can join. So, Platforms like the Postgrad Fair are great. And for the ESSEC and Mannheim EMBA Asia Pacific, we do have a series of webinars that are coming up that are also co-hosted by our academic director, Professor Čedomir Nestorović. So he's a professor of geopolitics, and if any of you are interested in that, we'd be happy to send the invitations to you for that series. The next webinar is going to be on the geopolitical perspectives of the world post-COVID-19. So we're looking at what a potential recovery in 2022 could look like. And I think that's also really important, because if any of you are considering doing an EMBA program, this is really a great time to do it. I think from our perspective, at least for us, we're offering, we're trying to get people to do the program in as best a way as they can. So, obviously we're offering better scholarships during this period. And the most important point is that if you finish this in 2021, it'll set you up quite nicely for, to take advantage of the opportunities that we believe will come up in 2022. Okay. Jamie's signaling to me, looks like we have 3 minutes left, and I think that we are done with questions. So I'm going to stop there and wrap up, say thank you to all of you who have attended this. The individual conversations that you have with your advisors are really, really important, especially at the EMBA level, because you are more experienced and you have more sort of intricate and complex needs. So very happy to answer more in-depth and relevant questions which may be unique to you. Look forward to speaking with each of you in more detail. So, come look for us in the booth, and I'd be happy to have a chat with you sometime today or in the future. Thank you for joining us, and I really hope to speak with each of you soon. Jamie, I'm going to hand back over to you now. Thanks, everyone, and take care.